Hello everybody, I'm Raphael Perry and it's time for some more Lone Wolf. We're back in book 2 where we left off, and before continuing any further I'd like to say that the campaign for the board game is nearing its end, in its final hours in fact, and we'll probably have finished by the time this video goes up. If you backed it, good for you. If you didn't, I completely understand. The thing I don't understand is when people back a big campaign like this and then ask to change their home address about 4 times before the thing delivers. And I don't mean different people, I mean like one person, and you'll notice, hang on a minute, they asked to change their address already and it's a different one. What is going on here? You know, why are these people... See, as a non-American, my obvious impression is that if you can't hold down a house to put something this big and expensive in, then maybe you should look at your priorities. But it seems to be a thing where the Americans have a sort of nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle. More specifically, it's to do with the land ownership, where you buy the house but you rent the land under it or something daft, and then when it's time to renew that, the people who own the land get really greedy and jealous and ask for money, and it's cheaper to move house apparently. And so you get some Americans who constantly move house and never really seem to settle down anywhere. But I could be wrong about that, right? I think that's how it was explained to me a while ago. Anyway, it seems like things are all going very well. They've unlocked loads of extra stuff, and it all looks very pretty. And of course, the object of our quest, although the blade shouldn't be gold, it should be silvery metal steel coloured. And the wrappings on the hilt shouldn't be gold either, but hey, it works. It looks the part. So last time, after our shipwreck, we were not robbed by fishermen, and even more importantly, we still have the seal of Hammerdal, which I somehow erased from my character sheet, so I've written it back on there. Yes, I did go back and check that it wasn't removed in the shipwreck. And we found some people in a coach who took us to Ragadorn. I will reread this section. Our primary objective should be obtaining a weapon with which to face the dangers of the road. More specifically, a certain venomous priest, who's not really a priest. Our second concern should be having enough money for the coach ticket and a few gold crowns extra. Sorry about that. A few gold crowns extra for expenses on the road. So, inside the coach, not the coach we're planning on purchasing a ticket for, I might add, it is warm and dry. Shaking the rain from your kai cloak, you notice 3 other passengers on board, 2 women and a man who is snoring loudly. One of the women looks up and smiles. "We should reach Ragadorn in 6 hours, she says, placing her basket on the floor so that you can sit beside her. You learn that she lives in Ragadorn, and she tells you a little about the port. Since Killian the Overlord died 3 years ago, Ragadorn has been ruled by Lachlan, his evil son. He and his mercenaries are nothing but pirates. They bleed the people dry with their heavy taxes, and if anyone complains, they're quietly disposed of. It's a sorry state of affairs. If you take my advice, you'll leave Ragadorn as soon as possible. During the journey, you must eat a meal or lose 3 endurance points. Clearly, we are somewhat famished and feeling a little weak and malnourished due to a lack of food. And meals are on Lone Wolf's mind." Then, in the distance, you hear a bell tolling. You look out of the window and see the city wall of Ragadorn. The coach passes through the west gate and pulls to a halt. As you jump to the ground, you are greeted by the awful smell of this dingy seaport. A rusty sign nailed to a wall says, "Welcome to Ragadorn." The woman tells you that you can board a coach to Port Bax at the coach station near the east gate of the city. We could walk north into Westgate Lane, which is not to the north but west of us, so presumably it goes to a western gate. South along West Bank Walk, so that we go along the western bank of the coastline, I presume, or maybe the river. Or east into Axe Lane. Now, we are attempting to travel east towards Port Bax, and we desire to obtain a weapon. Now, we are given compass directions and not physical directions. So the Fighting Fantasy rule would say we should go west unless we have a better reason to go in any other direction. In this case, we want to obtain a weapon. What kind of name would best suit the road where weapons might be purchased? Westgate Lane, which is going to the western gate. So you might expect merchants, services suitable for merchants who've just arrived through the west gate and want to rest up before going to market tomorrow, so maybe lots of inns. West Bank Walk, so you'd expect boats, maybe ships, docks. Or Axe Lane, which may lead to possibly somewhere where executions were held, or wood was chopped, or, more importantly, a place where I could buy an axe, or any number of woodworking tools, in fact. So let us head into Axe Lane. This rubbish-strewn cobbled street runs between rows of ramshackle, rot-infested houses and shops. The few inhabitants of Ragadorn that you see appear a cheerless lot, their faces haggard and drawn. They shuffle through the gloom, hunched against the pouring rain, their eyes fixed on the cobblestones of their feet. Then you reach a junction where Axe Lane bends towards the north, and another street heads off towards the east. We can continue north and enter Black Knight Street, or east into Sage Street. Well, sages are wise and have much knowledge, and that'd be a great place to go to obtain information. Black Knight Street, on the other hand, sounds like a place where maybe... Look, if the street is associated with a knight, we may expect weapons and armour there, perhaps. You notice a sign hanging outside a small shop. Claspard, astronomer and sage. We could enter and ask how to reach Jorenor. We're kind of in it, I think, already. And we know that we just need to head east towards Port Bax. Or ignore the shop and continue on. We're not going to go in and ask for directions. We already got a hint from the nice lady on the coach. Through the pouring rain, you can just make out the dark shape of a city patrol marching towards you. If they should stop you and ask your business in Ragadorn, you could end up in the dungeons of Lachlan the Overlord. Rather than risk being arrested, you retreat along Black Knight Street and quickly turn into Sage Street as the soldiers march past. So perhaps they might have marched past us while we were in the astrologer and sage's shop, and we could have continued on along that road. But as it is, we're heading into Sage Street. This street seems dirtier and smellier than the one you have just been down. The cluttered window of a shop to your left catches your attention. In the window are many useful items, all of which bear a price tag. There's a sword for 4 gold crowns, a dagger for 2 gold crowns, a short sword for 3 gold crowns, a warhammer for 6 gold crowns, a spear for 5 gold crowns, mace for 4, a fur blanket for 3, and a backpack for 1 gold crown, with an important footnote stating that, according to the Lone Wolf Club newsletter, realistically you can only wear 1 backpack at a time and carry a maximum of 8 backpack items. Now, our backpack has not been stolen, but its contents have been damaged by the sea. The 2 things we had, the Gaiac Scroll and, was it a healing potion, I think? Oh, we get a nice little picture as well. So I'm going to purchase a weapon. I don't need a second backpack. Presumably it would have been possible to lose our backpack in the shipwreck if we'd rolled really badly. I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm yawning a lot tonight. It's just one of those evenings, apparently. Evening? It's gone midnight now. Right. I'm going to go for a normal full-length sword because it's a versatile weapon. Spear's a bit expensive. Warhammer, good heavy for crunching through armour. Bit expensive again. So 4 gold crowns for a sword. If we're going to fetch a sword, we might as well practice using one. You may enter and purchase any of the above items. Remember to mark them on your action chart. When you have completed your purchases, you continue your way along Sage Street towards the Ragadorn Bridge. This bridge is the only connection between the east and west sides of the port, and you push your way through the crowds of people and carts. You find yourself in a rubbish-strewn thoroughfare known as East Trade Lane. You're standing opposite a large building with a sign on the wall, Ragadorn Stables and Coach Station. A green-clad coachman is sitting next to a notice board that reads, Port Backs, journey times 7 days. We shall approach the coachman and ask to buy a ticket for the journey to Port Backs. The fare to Port Backs is 20 gold crowns, says the coachman in a gruff Ragadornian accent. We do have 20 gold crowns, and we don't want to go gamble in the gambling hall, which is an absolute nightmare. So now we have 8 left. You pocket the ticket, and the man takes you to a coach that is waiting near the east gate of the seaport. It is empty, and you take a seat near one of its circular windows. You are relieved and find that the seat is quite comfortable, for the journey to Port Backs will take 7 days, and I should have been healing. I'm pretty sure we've had at least 3 sections. Let's see, I mean, we went into Axe Street, we went into Black Knight Street. We didn't go into the shopkeepers and saw the guards coming, at which point we were on full health. There we go. And we need to make a note of our coach ticket. Now, I haven't seen a ticket inspector in about 30 years, and that was no on a bus specifically. On trains, I think maybe a little more recently than that, but not much. They don't seem to consider it a very important duty anymore. It probably wasn't. Probably so many people were just getting tickets that it wasn't worth the searching everyone. For the amount they'd get in fines and selling tickets to people who didn't have them. You know, it wasn't worth the wages of the person doing the job. Anyway, stowing your equipment beneath the seat, you settle back in comfort and doze off. When you awake, there are 5 other passengers, and the journey to Draenor has already begun, and we must gain a number randomly generated. It's lone wolves, so we know it's 10-siders, and we have a 1. Oh, great. After nearly an hour, the coach stops at the shrine of Calanane. It is said that this shrine is built upon the grave of King Allen, the first ruler of Draenor, and all around the shrine grows clumps of Lormspur, which I am going to continually call Lormsur over the course of this playthrough, because for some reason that stuck in my head when I was very young. We shall pick some of this herb, as it is known for its healing qualities. Lormspur is a delicious herb, much sought after in the last lands for its healing properties. You have picked enough for 1 meal. Eating this meal will restore 3 endurance points to your total. This meal of Lormspur may be consumed when instructed to eat a meal, in which case it fulfills the meal requirement in addition to restoring 3 endurance points. Lormspur may also be consumed at any other time to restore 3 endurance points without having any significance as a meal. Remember to add this to your action chart if you possess a backpack. Otherwise, you must consume it now or abandon it. Again, I don't recall being instructed to lose our backpack, just the items within it. Wait one moment. Because if we had to buy a backpack, I'll do that. Because we got the money to do it, right? Let me see. Illustrations. Illustration 13 is section 222. Yeah, I look familiar numbers because I literally looked up to make sure that we didn't lose the Seal of Hammerdale after the shipwreck. So, follow him, rolled low, not that low, okay, rolled high, then rolled low. So, so take off chainmail waistcoat. Do not flag down the fisherman. The only possessions that you have saved are your gold crowns, your backpack, and any special. So we haven't lost our backpack. We don't need a spare one. So we have some Lormspur. I've noted heal free and may also count as a meal at the same time. You wrap the herbs up and can return to the coach with the other passengers. During the course of the afternoon's journey, you chat with your fellow... Chat! What is trat? You chat with your fellow travellers and learn about their backgrounds. So here, of course, we have Ganon, Dorier, Halvork, Parsian, and Viveka. And we're going to get that open, as usual, for reference. Sitting opposite are 2 brothers named Ganon and Dorier. They are Knights of the Order of the White Mountain, warrior lords of Durenor who have pledged allegiance to protect the country from raids by the bandits of the Wildlands. They own a castle and land near Port Bax. Next to them sits Halvork the merchant. His nose is swollen, his face is badly bruised thanks to Lachlan, the overlord of Ragadorn. A little misunderstanding about port taxes cost him his cargo and most of his gold. Seated by the far door is a priest called Parsian. Like you, he is a Somlending who has travelled across the Wildlands by coach on his way... Who has journeyed across... Yes, not who is journeying. Who has journeyed across the Wildlands by coach on his way to Port Bax. Beside him sits a young woman called Viveka. She is a mercenary adventuress who earns her gold by fighting for it, and sells her services to the highest bidder. She is returning to Port Bax, having collected payment for a successful adventure in Ragadorn, and honestly, her artwork in the Mongoose books is borderline insulting. She basically looks like a very modern tomboy, which is fair enough to a certain extent, but also like a punk, and not really like a very experienced warrior. She looks like a less experienced and very aggressive warrior, which doesn't really match her combat stats quite so much. Not wishing to reveal your true identity, you pretend to be a simple peasant. The travellers seem unaware of the war that now rages in Sommerlund. At dusk, the coach stops at an inn on the coast road to Port Bax. The cost of room for the night is 1 gold crown for each passenger and 3 gold crowns for anyone else. As you are about to enter, the coach driver demands to see your ticket. Well, we do have a ticket. The driver nods and hands back the ticket. The inn is warm but poorly furnished. You must eat a meal which will cost you 1 gold crown unless you have a meal in your backpack. Now, the Kai discipline of hunting. Hunting! Yes! Yes, the Kai discipline of cunting. Not something we should generally talk about on YouTube. We do have a a politician called Jeremy Hunt. Obviously, his surname is spelt with a silent K just before the H, that is not always entirely silent. Hunt! Right, so, the Kai discipline of hunting cannot be used when instructed to eat a meal on your journey through the wildlands, as it is a barren wasteland inhabited only by creatures called Sals, a weak and cowardly breed of Gaiac. Now, we must eat a meal here. I don't think we can save our meal for later, so there goes our Lormspur. Lormspur. As in spur off the side of something. Right. We can afford 1 gold crown to rent a room. And in many ways that's a... because if we bought a meal here, we might not be able to afford things later on. You sleep deeply without being disturbed before rising at dawn, gathering your equipment and joining the others as they board the coach. For 2 days and nights the coach follows the trade route across the flat, treeless wildlands. It stops only to allow the river to sleep. But the morning of the 9th day of your quest, there is an unfortunate accident. That's not the 9th day on the coach. We were, 4 days on the ship? So we're only like 4 or 5 days into our... yeah, but then we had like the 1 or 2 days to get to Ragadorn, so you know what I mean, right? We're still partway through our journey, and it's a random number. Hooray! Let's see what we get this time. A 7. One of the wheels jams in a deep rut, and 3 of the large wooden spokes are shattered. You are forced to stop and replace the wheel before you can continue to port backs. You volunteer to help the driver by levering the coach axle with a small tree trunk so that the spare wheel can be slid into position. Hey, we're pretending to be a peasant, we're going to do the menial work. You are pushing down on the stout branch with all your strength when the horses suddenly rear up and race forwards. The trunk springs back and catches you square in the face, knocking you backwards to the ground. You are stunned and lose 2 endurance points. The driver is not so lucky. The coach has run over him. As the poor man dies in your arms, his last words are, "No accident. I saw..." We have the Kai discipline of 6th sense, which will also enable us to regain one of those 2 points of endurance due to our healing ability. You sense that you were the intended victim of this supposed accident. One of the passengers is trying to kill you. And at section 168, we are restored to full health. Hooray! Good-o. Slowly, one by one, the other travellers appear and stare in shock at the dead coachman. "We must bury him," says the priest. You silently nod your agreement and prepare a grave in which to lay the corpse. As you all walk back to the coach, you discuss what should be done. "I know the road to Portbacks. I'd better drive the coach," volunteers Harvok. "I do hope we're not blamed for his death," says the priest nervously. "It was an act of the gods," says Dorier. "I shall testify to that," says Ganon. "Lies are never spoken by knights of the White Mountain. It is true that in Jurenor a true knight will speak only the truth, whether it is for his own good or ill." His words seem to reassure the priest, and you're all soon once more on the road heading towards the eastern horizon. It is late in the afternoon when you arrive at a coach station, in a small coastal village known as Gorn Cove, which is mainly populated by outcasts, thieves and Sals, and more importantly, which is also on the map. So we are very near to Portbacks at this point. The death of the coachman is met by the villagers with great suspicion, but Dorier's words convince them that it was accidental. There is only one inn in the village, a tavern known as the Forlorn Hope. Its state of disrepair is typical of all the other hovels in this poor sea village. A room for the night costs 1 gold crown, but we can absolutely afford that. And we'll mark it off now. The innkeeper is a thin old man with only one eye. He hands you a key and points to a balcony opposite. "Number 2, the red door," he says. The other travellers each pay their 1 crown, collect a key, and make their way across the crowded tavern floor towards the stairs. "We must make plans for tomorrow," says Dorier. The others nod in agreement. "I suggest we meet here in the bar in 1 hour to decide what to do." As you close the red door of your room, for some unknown reason you recall the words of Captain Kelman when you left Holmgard harbour. "There is evil treachery at work, and the enemy already has plans afoot to thwart your quest." An hour has already passed when your thoughts are disturbed by a knock at the door. It is the innkeeper, and he is carrying a tray of food. And again, we'll get our picture open. It fuels the imagination, and it's there in case we need it, because, hey, you know, I need stuff to make the YouTube thumbnails look pretty. And look, there's a little mouse or rat. It's a rat because their tail is hairless. "With the compliments of one of your friends," he says, and leaves before you can ask which one. "You have not eaten today, and the food smells most appetizing. We do not have the kind discipline of hunting with an H. So we will be cautious and remember the warning. It's almost as if our psychic abilities are warning us. The power of Mind Shield is warning us something nasty. Somebody's been casting the evil eye our way. Let's not eat this food. And we will lose 3 endurance points gladly. Although the delicious smell of the food is making your mouth water, you suspect that something is very wrong. You set the tray down by the door. Your hunger has made you tired, and you decide to take a short nap before meeting the others in the bar. And that short nap is so good, you recover 1 of those 3 points of endurance that you lost due to hunger. When you awake, you see the bodies of 2 dead rats lying beside the food tray. They have been poisoned. The shock soon turns to anger when you realize that the poison was in the food intended for you. Well, it wasn't intended for anyone else. You grab your equipment and leave the room, intent on discovering your would-be assassin. This time, we got no shield, but we do have a sword, and we know how to use it. By the time you reach the bar, the others are all seated at a large table awaiting your appearance. Drawing closer to the table, you realize you have found your would-be assassin. You will have to attack without giving any warning to your enemies, so study your fellow travellers carefully and then make your decision. Now, this reminds me of one of the more recent Fighting Fantasy books, Howl of the Werewolf, in which you have an encounter on the road where a mighty werewolf that is attacking the villagers is shot in the arm with a crossbow. And when you get back to the village, you are confronted by a bunch of villagers, and one of them has a bloodied bandage around his arm, and you are asked which villager you're going to confront and accuse of being a werewolf, and the only way you would tell is if you look at the illustration. It's a good book, good read, good play. So we know Parsian here has the same serpent tattooed on his wrist as the thugs who attacked us back in Holmgard on the docks. Parsian the priest, you are the weakest link. Goodbye. Also, however, did not eat the food, rats were poisoned, came down into the bar, restored an extra point of endurance. Then we get to a fight section. The priest does not seem to be surprised by your attack, and he draws a black sword from beneath his robe, and as we know, weapons made of black steel are forged in the Darklands by the Darklords. Now, with a weapon skill of 19, we are fighting at +3, as Parsian's combat skill is only 16. And his endurance is 23. We didn't get to keep the shield, so we're not rolling of a +5 column. Let's get the dice box up. There's our +3 column right there. Get a d10 ready and fight. A 2. Oh dear. Enemy loses 6 endurance, lone wolf loses 3. Well, guess what? That knocks him down to 17 and us to 18. We are already doing okay. So a brief exchange of blows and scuffle, maybe a few minor scratches. Another 2. Oh, that's not quite so good. Okay. So we're a bit hurt. He, on the other hand, is very badly hurt at this point. So let's strike. A bit better. We've rolled a 4. My goodness, the dice don't like me that much tonight, do they? Enemy loses 9 endurance, lone wolf loses 2. So we are reduced to a mere 13 endurance points. And Parsion the Evil Priest is reduced to 2 whole points. So whatever we roll next, he's dead. If we roll particularly up, we rolled another 4. So we're taking 2 more damage as we fell our foe, knocking us down to an 11. Not ideal, but we will live. This would be a great time for us to eat our lawn spur, if we had not already been forced to do so by the request to consume a meal. Searching the body, you discover all you need to prove that he is the assassin. Inside his pockets you find a half-empty vial of Ragadorn syrup, the deadly poison that was used to taint your food. There is a scroll written in Gaiac giving details of your expected arrival in Port Bax. He must have located you at Ragadorn and hatched his murderous plans there. You notice that the weapon he carries is a Darklord blade, fashioned of black steel and forged in the furnaces of Helgadad, the infernal city of the Darklords beyond the Derncrag range. Only there, in all of vast Magnamund, can black steel be made. But the final proof of his true identity is the serpent tattoo on his left wrist. The harbour thugs have attempted to kill you before you even left Holmgard bore exactly the same mark, and I think we all know exactly what that serpent means. First off, we get back a point of endurance. Secondly, Lone Wolf folder, which I should have had open anyway, but I was checking recordings for volume reasons. Book 2 cover. And if we zoom in on Vonatar's hat, we can see the serpent has a very similar wavy form, as in a sort of S-bend, as opposed to a gentler wave. And here we have the sharp S-bend, very tight curves. I think that he is involved with these scum. But we can't prove it just yet. Not until a bit later on anyway. We don't even know who he is or that he exists. His purse contains 23 gold crowns, which you may keep. Do not forget to mark them on your action chart. Well, that'll take us back up to 29. So we are just 3 lower than we were before we had to purchase a weapon. So if we didn't have to purchase a weapon, we would be up a coin. So essentially, he's covered our expenses for the journey so far. The other travellers stare with horror and disbelief at what you have done. Yeah, we killed a man and looted his body. Before you can explain yourself, there is a loud crash. We couldn't explain ourselves while we were looting the body. A loud crash as the front door is thrown open. In rush 6 armoured soldiers led by the innkeeper. They are the town guard, and the one-eyed innkeeper is screaming at them to arrest you, and as he does so, we will regain 1 more point of endurance. And then leg it out the back door. Although night has fallen, a full moon casts a bright light upon the village. Behind the tavern you see a small wheelwright shop with 2 horses hitched to a hay cart. And that's an extra section, so we'll go back up to 14 endurance points. We do have the kind discipline of camouflage. We picked it up at the end of the last book. Using the Arcai discipline of camouflage, you can hide undetected in the hay cart until it is safe to come out, and while you make this decision, you regain another point of endurance, back up to 15. We will absolutely hide in the hay wain. When you are certain that the angry mob has passed, you jump from the hay wain and run stealthily along the street, dodging from one shadow to the next. To your left there is a shop with a sign above the door. Now, Gulnio's weaponsmithy. We will first of all go back up to 16 endurance points. Continue our scale. I want to just check. 347. It is 347. Oh, there's a... Okay. A large man dressed in a leather apron is busily sharpening a fine broadsword. He is seated at a grindstone that sends a shower of sparks high into the air every time he touches the blade to it. He bids you good evening and offers you the broadsword. "'Tis a fine blade, wrought of Duranese steel. It can be yours for only 12 gold crowns. Well, that's really expensive, as we regain another point of endurance. But we already have a weapon, and we're not particularly skilled in any one weapon over the other, so at the moment they're all of equal value to us, unless they have some kind of special properties, like, say, a magical spear. We will not purchase the broadsword, and we will leave by the back door, since he seems willing to allow us to do so. It may assist us in avoiding an angry mob, and as we're at a new section, we will go back up to 18 endurance points. You enter a small alleyway behind the shop, at the end of which you can see a horse tethered to a post. We can take this animal and flee the village, or not, or leave the alleyway. We'll take it. And as we go to another section, we'll go back up to 19 endurance points. You spur the horse along the twisting village street towards a wooden bridge and up a steep path towards the crest of the cove. In the light of the moon, you catch a glimpse of a signpost pointing eastward. Portbacks, 50 miles. You ride all night without sleep. As the dawn breaks, you are greeted by a startling change of landscape. The barren wildlands have given way to moors and waterlogged fens, and a dark shadow runs the length of the eastern horizon for as far as the eye can see. This is the Durenor Forest, the natural frontier of the mountain kingdom where it borders the untamed wildlands. It is indeed a welcome sight. You are no more than a day's ride from Port Bax, but you are tired after your night ride, and you must eat a meal or lose 3 endurance points. If you have the Kai discipline of hunting, you may use this skill to trap a wild moor rat or marsh bird for your breakfast. We do not. You are leaving the wildlands and heading into the Durenor Forest, and may once again use hunting to find your food. We will take the 3 damage for starvation and malnourishment. After an hour's ride, you come to a fork in the road. There is no signpost. We will go left, because left is best. Unless you're playing mid-range fighting fantasy from around book 30 to 35 up to around book 45 to sort of 48, 49-ish. And then in the late 40s to early 50s numbers, the pattern goes back to the old fighting fantasy rules again. Anyway, let's regain a new endurance point because we are at a new section. The road follows a course along a high, grassy ridge for many miles before turning northwards to the coast. You pass a village where the houses curve in a circle around a large pond of stagnant water. As you ride through, a gaggle of Saal children come running towards you, shouting and throwing stones. You descend into the deep valley beyond, and gradually the moor gives way to richer land that has been cleared and ploughed. The hillside opposite is heavily wooded. You are not far from the coast, and you can see the tall cliffs with their multicoloured bands of rock jutting out into the ocean. Then, just as you are passing through a small copse, you hear desperate cries for help far off to your right. Now, we will go see what we can do to help. You spur your horse through the tangle of trees until you enter a small clearing. 6 Saals are jumping excitedly around the writhing body of a man on the ground. A strangely carved spear is stuck in his chest, and lying dead beside him is the body of a knight of the White Mountain. The creatures are shrieking at each other and appear to be unconcerned by the man's obvious agony. Now, one thing that should be extremely obvious is he was killed by a Knight of the White Mountain. And the Knights of the White Mountain never lie, so we can presume the Knight of the White Mountain had a very good reason to want to kill this man. Rather than, because if he gets asked later, did you kill this man? He's like, yes, I murdered him. Yes, not good, you know. So he probably had a very good reason to do it. We do have the Kai discipline of healing, so we'll check. Can we help? You try to apply your hands to the injured man's chest, but the Sarls are pulling at your cloak and trying to drag you away, and we regain another endurance point as we do so. We do have the Kai discipline of camouflage. Again, we picked it up at the end of the last book. During the period of your Kai training, your masters taught you many of the languages and dialects of northern Magnamund, one of which was Sarl. The creatures in this village are Sarls, and they are screaming at you that the wounded man is not a man at all. They say he is a Helghast, a powerful shape-changing servant of the Darklords. And that's an extra point, takes us back up to 19. We do believe they are telling the truth, and we'll check what the man has in his pack, which means we cannot get the silver spear, and we're going to have a really hard time in the near future. Because the comments section has assured me that in the later printings of the book, which I am not so familiar with, it is possible to get through with the Kai discipline of animal kinship without the silver magical spear. Now, I'm pretty sure I know exactly how we would do that, but getting from here to that point without the silver spear is going to be very dangerous indeed. You search in his pack and are horrified to find that it contains a scroll of human skin upon which a message has been written in a strange runic script. The only word that you can make out is Kai. You also find an evil-looking dagger with a black blade and a block of cold obsidian. These items bear the signs of the Darklords' craft. Something is very wrong here. You drop the pack as quickly as if it were red hot and turn to mount your horse. To your dismay, you find it is no longer there. The Sarls must have stolen it. Wearily, you realize you will now have to continue your journey on foot, and regain a point of endurance while you're at it. You have been walking for nearly 2 hours when you reach the peak of a hill and see the Gerenor forest stretched out before you. The road bears eastward and enters the trees at a point where a large wooden tower has been built. You can see the silhouette of a soldier on guard. Now, we have been warned by the Sarls that that man was a Helghast. If Helghasts have infiltrated this area and are searching for us, then we do need to be careful. However, we can approach the watchtower or avoid the guard. I think... Oh... I'm getting memories of playing a very deadly game of hide-and-seek with a Helghast and trying to run into a tower. I think a ruined tower, not necessarily a wooden watchtower, and getting killed in the tower for not having the silver spear. I think, since this is essentially where as far as we got last time, I'm going to leave the episode here and pick it up next time, because we've now managed to catch up with ourselves. I hope you've all enjoyed this episode, and I'll look forward to seeing you all in the very next one. I'll say goodbye for now, everyone, and see you all soon. Cheerio, everybody. Remember, for Sommerlund and the Kai!